Well, let's get started. So I would like to welcome you to our first of four virtual panel discussions. My name is Stuart Cullum, and I am president of Olds College. And we are excited about today's topic and the experts that we have brought together, and are happy to welcome. We have more than 130 registrants to today's online event. I see a number are still coming in. And we're really excited about the opportunity to hear from some great experts in the field. As many of you know, Olds College is about hands-on education, training, research, and engagement. However, in light of the situation that we are facing with COVID-19, we have needed to be creative in order to serve our learners and our agriculture community. And in that spirit, over the next several months, Olds College, in collaboration with JWN, is launching a four-part Agtech engagement effort. Today's webinar launches the series. In August, our second webinar will be focused on the theme behind AgSmart and the utilization of data, pulling from our producer panel, which is a group of Canada's top producers that are advising the Olds College Smart Farm activities. Well, our AgSmart 2020 show was unfortunately canceled due to COVID-19. We will be launching AgSmart Theater, a virtual AgTech educational video library experience. You can find out more at www.agsmartolds.ca. Our AgSmart team are doing a great job ensuring ag and tech organizations and producers are staying connected, including through the recently launched AgTech directory. The interactive listings include educational features and special AgTech offers for producers. Again, more information can be found at www.agsmartolds.ca. Our third and fourth events are planned for September and October, and will also tie directly to agriculture technology and data utilization themes. I would like to acknowledge JWN and in particular Bill Whitelaw for his leadership in proposing this concept and working diligently with our teams to make it a reality. I would also like to thank our presenting partners, ATB, FCC, TELUS, as well as JWN and AgSmart for helping us put today's panel together. Each one of these organizations are partners in the Olds College Smart Farm and facilitate an ecosystem that is focused on the issues and opportunities in agriculture and the ways in which technology and practice can integrate and be applied for the benefit of our sector. It is partnerships with companies and post-secondaries and other organizations across Canada and around the globe that institutions like Olds College can develop and deliver what is necessary to support our industry in the development of and application of technology, and to provide the tremendous learning opportunities for our students through areas like our Smart Farm. So without further ado, I would like to now welcome our moderator, James Benke, Dean of the Workland School of Agriculture Technology. James, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Appreciate the introduction and the context setting for today's session. I'm really excited to be able to be a part of this process and to moderate an esteemed panel that we have before you. So appreciate, of course, all the other participants as well that have joined through their busy days to take part in another virtual meeting that I think we've all been somewhat inundated, but I think we're going to work to provide some value with respect to the type of conversation and discussion we're going to have here today. You know, and I think right off the top, we're talking about Canada's agri-food industry and, you know, next-gen technologies. And I think that's a significant question to ask and to tackle within a 25-30 minute window. But really, we're looking at how it's going to help us shape Canada and our role and our global role with respect to pre-pandemic, current pandemic, and post-pandemic. And really, I think what I'm going to challenge the panel here today with some pretty pointed questions is, you know, what do we need access to when it comes to talent and resources and applied research environments to help accelerate that moving forward? And I think what we talk about here at Olds College is really the and game, and technology is technology, but it's technology and what? Resources, people, other components, right? So I think that's a big value. And I think when we talk about technology, it's technology and food. And it's something that is a sustenance that we continue to have over and over and over again. But really, I think that's what lays the foundation for where Olds College is. And it's really set forth for us the technology and in our new programs, how that works, how we create those opportunities for students to come in to work with organizations such as the panel members here today, challenge them to make mistakes in different ways so that when they enter into the industry, they're adding value immediately on a number of different levels through that technology and component. And setting up the smart farm at the college has also been a significant element of that also. And certainly how we've entered into some partnerships around AgSmart, so we can continue to bring our key stakeholders to the table to ensure that we're on track and keep moving forward. So that's incredible value, and I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion today with John, Todd, and Darcy with respect to that. Just a couple housekeeping items for all of you that are on the call. Please mute your mics while we're on. And if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on that as we move through the conversation. And then really finally, we are recording this session for viewing after the fact. So just letting everybody be aware of that. So now, without further ado, I truly want to introduce our esteemed panel, and I'm appreciative that these fine gentlemen can find time in their busy schedules to be with us. And I'm going to start first with Todd Orman. He's the Director of Products and Services at TELUS. He's responsible for developing and managing customer solutions for the new agricultural business unit at TELUS, actually. He's got over 25 years of experience in the ag industry, has led development and management of teams with respect to that around products, services, brands at a local and a regional and global level. He comes to TELUS from Farmers Edge and a number of different other organizations, including United Farmers of Alberta, actually, where he was successful at a lot of senior level roles in that organization. And Syngenta, where he led the development of data-driven systems and processes for customer strategies in Canada. And Todd also, in that busy schedule, maintains close ties to the family farm as well, which is really important in this process. So I want to open up to Todd for 2 minutes just to give us some background on that and also share some perspective from TELUS. So Todd, I'll hand it back to you, and then I'll introduce you to the other panel members after that.
Thanks, James. Yes, to James's point, I'm relatively new to TELUS, just a little over 2 years, and I joined an organization that is not ag in nature, and I always find it interesting when I introduce myself from TELUS. A lot of people think that I had left ag. I have not left ag. TELUS has a very strong interest in the area of agricultural and rural areas. It's an organization that, quite honestly, looks at social purpose. And to that end, they see agriculture as one of the areas that they are going to invest in. And it is a similar approach to what you had seen in the health area. You know, if those are familiar with TELUS, they've seen a number of investments in the health side where they connected up a data ecosystem. It's similar what we're looking at here in agriculture. And to date, we have been, relatively aggressive in that front on an acquisition front, and have started to acquire companies such as Farm at Hand, Decisive, TKXS, Muddy Boots, and then there's been a brand new acquisition as of last week called Ag Integrated, which is a company down in the U.S., and then another investment in Hummingbird. So TELUS sees an opportunity to enable and connect the ag environment. We're a nice neutral brand and a tech company that's acquiring both people and technology to kind of support the farm to fork play.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Todd. Appreciate that. And thanks so much for joining us today. Next panel member that I'd love to introduce is Darcy Harif. He's from Farm Credit Canada, and Darcy is the director of the Ag Expert Division at Farm Credit Canada, and leads a pretty significant role in the development of that product and service. He also was born and raised on a mixed farm in Odessa, Saskatchewan, and attended University of Regina, where he's received a degree in business. And the majority of Darcy's 20+ years in agriculture has been spent at FCC, where he had a variety of roles in finance, marketing, and most significantly probably in the IT department. He's got a lifelong passion for farming, and he's a third generation actively operating on the family farm today. So Darcy also sits on the board of the AgriFood Innovation Council. Darcy, would love a few minutes from your perspective, your passion, and also FCC and their position with this.
Yeah, thanks, James. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the other panelists. Yeah, just to build maybe on what what James had started. FCC's been in the ag technology space, I guess, for quite a while. We purchased a company called Settler Gold in 2002, or Settler Accounting in 2002, and then rebranded it as under the Ag Expert brand, and continued to build solid and simple tools really to help farmers digitize their financial and farm records. And we want to do that. We want, our goal is to build really easy and solid applications to help farmers digitize, their records, because we do believe that data is kind of the blood that will make all of this technology work. Without having a solid and simple platform, or without having the ability for farmers to enter their data, none of this other technology really works. So we've been investing heavily in that space, and are working and striving toward what we're calling a trusted ag data ecosystem, where we want to partner with other companies so that farmers can choose to share their data with other applications and other companies that they want to share their data with. And we truly believe integration is important, and we're always kind of striving towards that: enter your data once in any system and use it multiple times to solve multiple business processes. So working with companies like TELUS and others in the industry, we don't think there's going to be one application or one ecosystem to rule them all. We want to give farmers choice and make sure they know their data is being used in a trusted ecosystem, trusted and transparent ecosystem.
Great, thank you so much, Darcy. Appreciate that, and thanks again for joining us here today. Next panelist I'd love to introduce is John Newtons. He's recently joined ATB as the Vice President of Agriculture there. So welcome, John. You're a proven leader and a strategic thinker that guides, several ambitious aspirations and capabilities systems to obtain the results that are needed across organizations in the industry. John was raised in a family ag retail business in southwestern Ontario. So he certainly has roots servicing primary agriculture. He's owned a software company providing accounting and business operations systems to grain and crop inputs companies, but spent the bulk of his career in the pesticide, seed, and biotech industry. He's held various commercial leadership roles with multinationals such as Syngenta, and more recently as the president and GM for New Farm Canada, where he developed and led successful differentiation strategies, growing New Farm into the 6th largest in Canada. John served on the industry boards of both CropLife Canada, Clean Farms Canada, and in the executive committee in chair capacities. Prior to joining ATB, John provided advisory services to international agtech companies, developing research-driven sensor IoT analytics and decision support solutions for agribusiness. John also holds a BSc from University of Guelph and an MBA from University of British Columbia. And as I mentioned, John joined ATB in 2019 as the Vice President of Agriculture. So John, thanks for coming. Just maybe provide a couple minutes your perspective and where ATB positions itself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James, for the introduction. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here in this discussion as well. I think, Canada has an important role to play, I think, in this world of ag technology and the world of agriculture, of course, as we have over the years. From ATB's perspective, I think, our certainly engagement and interest is probably in three key areas. As mentioned with both Todd and Darcy, the whole data connection. I think we certainly see that, as not just farm operations, but businesses along the value chain start to, manage from a digital records perspective and understand their operations more from that perspective, that we certainly see a better viability and better long-term operations accordingly. I think as well as that we really believe in, certainly the financial aspect. There's the role for a financial partner to play in ag technology and moving forward this industry. And not just necessarily from the idea of supporting, financially operations. It's probably, whether that be sort of debt or equities, financing. It's also the idea of being able to look at how we might support and look at operations differently from, a risk perspective and other aspects, but also looking at how to connect the data sort of through the value chain. And I think that's where we want to be able to look for opportunities to support. There's opportunities, I think, that I guess if you want to cross the bridge and bring the word fintech into this, there are some parallels, if you will, with what's going on in ag tech and fintech. So there's some opportunities, I think, probably there on that front. And then last but not least, I think, it takes an ecosystem, I think, to move an industry forward. And from ATB's perspective, we certainly see, particularly, in light of COVID, but not necessarily changing it that drastically, but we certainly see agriculture as an opportunity for Alberta and beyond, if you will, within Canada, for us to be looking at how we make things possible. So how do we support, as an ecosystem player, moving forward this industry for the better of Alberta and Canada?
Great, thanks, John. I appreciate that interesting perspective. So thank you very much for that. So now that we've introduced our panel, I really want to dive into the conversation and discussion here today with the team. And I think each organization and with the three of them, I think you've actually heard some unique perspectives. There's some similarities and probably some very similar functional ideology that each one of your respective organization carries, but also, all three of you have a fairly significant portfolio of producers across our great nation, right? And really, I think, Todd, I'm going to start with you as we talk about agri-food. And that second bullet point, that ag is a global sector in nature, and it needs to be international in scope, but act locally with regional approaches. And I think that has food written all over it, right? From cultural diversity to all those elements. So how do we look at, when I talk about that and game, and how would you address that when you talk about technology and agri-food around that bullet point?
Yeah, so I once had a person that described agriculture not as an industry, but as a sector. There are numerous industries within agriculture. And then when you start thinking about it at a global level, you kind of recognize that what is grown or what is raised reflects a lot about the regional diversity in that region. It can be environmental in nature, it can also be based upon cultural infrastructure pieces as well. So the big play, everybody wants to connect their digital farm right up down to the plate at a grocery store or at a person's table. But the challenge is probably less about technology as it is about getting, as the other panelists have indicated, that ecosystem in place to basically connect all that. And so to do that, it's kind of like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's going to be one bite at a time. So I do think you're going to have to start thinking about how you apply technology in each local area, in each local ag industry, and digitize those pieces, and then over time connect that. It isn't going to be a real fast thing. I think this is the interesting thing when you start thinking about technology in agriculture. People try to drive parallels to things like Facebook and other systems that can be applied very, very globally and uniformly across the globe. I think in ag, this is still a people business. This is still an industry that has local nuances. And you got to think through how you apply it at the ground level if you're really going to connect it at a global level. So you have to have infrastructure and the ability to think globally, but also, quite honestly, the ground game to start driving it at the farm level. Are you still there, James? Yeah. I think we may have lost James Stewart.
Okay, well, James is coming back. Has a bit of a wonky internet. Maybe we'll throw the same question over to John. Get your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, I think Todd said that fairly well. I think it's interesting. Okay. James, you're back. Okay, you're muted.
I apologize. Yeah,
it's okay. We threw the same question over to John, but I think he's froze.
Yeah.
John, are you there?
I'm froze. Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Well, we can hear you now. So maybe try again, and then I'll let James take it.
Sure. Yeah, I think again, it's global in nature, and I think there's an aspect of agriculture where we are always going to be dependent on global trade, and it really comes down to the fact that you can grow certain foods or certain crops in certain regions of the world better than others. And we see in Canada, we are large in, for example, commodity crops, and a little less so compared to other regions of the world in some, fruit and produce crops and things like that. So where we tend to be a net exporter of one and a net importer of the other. So but not just that, you also have the regional nuances in terms of, how the industry was formed within certain regions of the world. So in Canada, for example, the way the industry was formed here, there's always been a strong connection, through the value chain, right from farm gate, if you will, and not necessarily the value chain. I mean, sort of, from a food value chain perspective, but more from, the industry, the distributors and the ag retailers and the growers and so on, consultants and whatnot, research. We've always been strong in research, in education, and we've had a lot of connectivity, if you will. Whereas other parts of the world, you don't see that so much, and or it's developed in a different way. So I think those nuances will continue. And with that, when you start to look at how to apply technology, those nuances can play a very different feature set or a different role, if you will, in different parts of the world. So yes, we're going to be global. We're going to continue to have and rely on export and the food value chain, if you will, from that global perspective. But the regional nuances allow us to potentially look at how we might develop a domestic value chain, a domestic food value chain, apply technology to that, which then could be, exported to the world and or have ideas that we develop at a regional level that are exported to the world. That's one area I think within Canada we have a huge opportunity in the adoption of ag technology is, we can look at, particularly with post-COVID, the idea of developing some more domestic or regional value chains, if you will, applying technology, working with a close-knit community, having good contact right to the farm, and looking at how we get better engagement, if you will, through that, to apply technology that then we can take to the world. And we've done it before within Canada. We've developed technologies that we've taken to the world. We've taught a lot of the world how to grow crops like we do in Canada. And I think we can do the same, if you will, around our food systems and food value chains with the adoption of technology. So I think we have that huge opportunity here.
Great, thanks, John. Yeah, absolutely right, and I think both of you made some excellent points with respect to that. And I think it leads into the next question. Really, is that initial point, and then I'll just show some reflection upon the connectivity challenges, right, that we're even having here online today, right? When we talk technology, and connectivity is a big piece of that. So kind of a two-part question here really is that first bullet, that B market investment here in Canada, we are considered somewhat in that position, even though I think we offer more value than maybe the world, sees with respect to the ingenuity and entrepreneurship here in Canada. But really, I guess even just that connectivity piece in
It's ironic he froze on connectivity. So I'll maybe just
Canada. Darcy, maybe.
So on the connectivity question.
Yeah, sorry, it sounds like we're back. Sorry about that, Darcy. Yeah, I was following up with Canada considered a B market from an investment strategy, from an investment in ag tech perspective. So because we're experiencing technical challenges right now, can you kind of, roll out what your thoughts would be with respect to that, and how do we elevate ourselves in a global context with some of the challenges?
Yeah, and we have customers in every single province across Canada that use our tools, and the one thing pretty much everybody needs is good connectivity in order to make these tools work. So I'm not sure it's there yet, but I think it's getting better every year. And it's a tough one. I'm actually really curious on Todd's answer to this question from a TELUS perspective. but I have the opportunity to meet with a lot of different companies that I know are working on rural connectivity and have different solutions and unique solutions to help farmers or people in rural areas stay connected. But it really is something that the country, I think, has to invest considerably in to make sure that all Canadians have access to a reliable, solid, and stable network. Some of the data that we have to send back and forth to make some of these ag data ecosystems work, we're not talking about huge packets of information. They might not have to be the fanciest network in the world or the largest, but they do have to be reliable, and they have to be reliable enough to send these small bits and bytes of data back and forth. But yeah, it is something that I see getting better, and I see other companies looking to make investments to make it even better.
Thank you so much. And I agree with you. I think technology is adapting to that, right? We see some on the macro level where, there would have been originally an expectation of, significant broadband, but I think with some of the challenges, we are seeing some of technologies, consolidate and also allow for smaller packet transmission and or just connectivity for communication channels, right? Todd, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I see that question came from Mr. Sykes, so I appreciate the nice, easy question, Rob. I mean, I think the next time, I don't know if I'm going to buy a beer after asking a question that easy for this call, but it isn't an easy question, to be absolutely upfront. And I'll look at this from a two-part perspective. One, just even the development of technology. So when you look at agriculture, quite honestly, most of the technology is developed from the larger markets. If you want to look at a combine, if you want to look at a tractor, even some of the original seeding equipment, it was developed because the I states are a bigger market, right? You see that. So it's the niche products that kind of get developed out of Western Canada and then go bigger because they're the bigger markets, right? And so when you look at agriculture, the breeding technologies, the machinery technologies typically get developed there and get applied into a Canadian market. In the area of technology, it's a little bit unique. You do not need hundreds of millions of dollars to start technology. You can see teams of 5 to 15 start developing that. And that's what you see today is a lot of small and a lot of large companies. This is why I find this whole sector really interesting because quite honestly, outside influences of the big companies have had a big impact in this space. Now, they are going to need a lot of resources to connect and drive all that over time, but it does mean some of the technology can be better tailored to local markets. And so I do find that an interesting dynamic when you look at tech as itself. But when you look at connectivity, guys, I'm an Aggie. I've spent 2 years within the TELUS organization, and it is an interesting conversation. There is significant efforts within TELUS to look at rural connectivity, but it's going to have to probably be a different model than you're going to see in an urban environment. So when you're in a TELUS business and you look at it from a TELUS perspective, typically they would have looked at how many people are in a geographic region to drive investment in connectivity. But when you're starting to look at ag tech, that is not the case, right? It's probably not going to be anything about people at all. It is going to be more a conversation about what is the units and the type of things that you're going to have to connect up, whether it's a weather station, a soil probe, or as Darcy kind of mentioned, even things around drones and video. So these telecom companies are going to have to now start catching up with what that business model looks like. So there's a piece there that has to be, and honestly, those conversations are happening, and we will see success on that. The other thing too, guys, it is a political issue around connectivity, and companies like TELUS pay more for their spectrum than the entire Australian market, and we're probably going to have to be a lot more creative in how we solve this problem, because we're going to have to solve it differently for a rural environment than we are going to have to for an urban environment. And it also means potentially different types of connectivity. So it may be a lower band, 600 megahertz, that can kind of power things like weather stations and pieces like that. It is a different piece when you start looking at drones and you need to, Darcy's point, higher data uptake. There, we're going to probably have to maybe think about different models about how you get that technology onto the farm. I don't know, we can maybe investigate things like old cooperative type of models. I know companies like SpaceX are looking at it in terms of how do they deliver those pieces. So those conversations are happening, but maybe the last point that I'll put on that, it isn't as easy as a conversation as developing software, because it is an infrastructure build versus a build, a software build. And there, if you really want to look at what I think makes Canada very competitive in the space of agriculture, is that we had the forethought to start thinking about how to build railways, ports, and facilities like that drove agriculture. That same type of investment and thinking is probably what is needed in the space of agriculture.
Great thoughts, Todd. I appreciate that insight. John, do you have anything to add to that conversation?
No, I just think Todd hit the nail on the head of that when you talk about some of the strengths that Canada has, historically, again, the infrastructure, the access to port facilities, from largely, crops that are produced, obviously quite a distance from port facilities. We've done a good job of it in the past. Not that we need to continue that future, because we do need to continue to support that type of infrastructure as well in order to get access to market for trade and so on. But yeah, I think again, connectivity obviously is going to be more and more significant going forward, and it's great to know that we have organizations like TELUS that are looking at how to do that. And I think the I'm just looking at the question that's here from Dr. Stan Blade, who's on. And appreciate this question about tech companies, that want to come to Canada and come to market. And I think this is one of the things that we offer is that whether it's not just infrastructure or connectivity. And I spoke earlier about the concept of access, and the way we've grown up as an industry and having access to the farm gate and good relationships, if you will, with our farm community and the farm gate. So I think, adoption of technology it's important that we have that. And when we talk about Canada it's been mentioned a tier 2 or a B market, if you will, it's typically because of the size of the market. So the US market, we know, is such a massive market in agriculture, but along, other industries as well. So a lot of companies tend to think about access to the US market first and foremost when it comes to bringing new technologies to market. But there certainly are cases where we have had companies come to Canada because of the ability to come to Western Canada as a region, for example, get access to the farm gate in probably a bit more of a simpler way, so to speak, but in a more collaborative environment. And that's where I think, the connectivity, the infrastructure, the access to the farm gate, the collaboration, the education, and all those things that come together, I think give us that opportunity and a bit of an upper hand, if you will, for companies to look at technologies in Canada first, with the idea of then moving to a global network, if you will. So that's
Yeah, perfect. I just want to build on that, John. So, to your point, it's maybe more around size of our market here. Do you foresee a day, and I guess I ask even around the ATB side of it, do you foresee a day where we conceive looking at the market differently, regardless of size, where we're exporting a different type of value? And I guess I ask that I've sat in a number of different boardrooms, executive rooms around the country and the globe. How often does food and the value of food come up in those conversations where it starts?
So I think I'll just jump in here if James is in and off the call, but he got to food and I lost it there. I'm not sure about everyone else, but
to maybe shift a different one. And how would ATB perceive that?
Okay, so I lost part of that, James. I'm not sure if you're still there. I got to food and then you dropped off for a bit.
Sorry, yeah, I'm back. And I guess where I'm asking is you kind of perceive the market size. So we're considered a B market mostly because of size. And I said, do you perceive a day or expect a day when the size is looked at differently, maybe by the size of the value, right? We have a lot of different movement right now around food and what the value of that food is that we produce. And is it based on a different metric and an order of magnitude, where we can perceive a day based on conversations that are in the executive boardroom, where food is a topic of conversation and a different order of magnitude than just size and scale on that side? Is there a different metric for the value that we offer as Canada moving forward?
Well, that's a great question, I think, and I think it's a great way for us in Canada to be thinking about that, because the idea of connecting agriculture and primary agriculture in particular to food has been, we've almost lost that connect over the years. We've become very efficient in Canada, and we grow food very well in Canada, and people end up at the grocery stores and they haven't had to really think about where their food comes from. And I think we've lost a bit of that connection, if you will, to the consumer of food products, to the farm gate. In some cases, not in all. So, but I think we have an opportunity even now, particularly with what COVID has brought to the light, I think, not just in Canada, but around the world, around food systems. And I think we have that opportunity certainly to make a better connection moving forward with the value chain. I think this brings in the opportunity for ag technology or food technologies, and again, different categories or buckets you can describe the technologies in. But I think this all offers opportunity, and it's going to take collaboration to make it work. But yes, from a market perspective, I think historically there's definitely been cases as to where we've seen companies come to Canada and or start within Canada and be able to advance, from a prototype perspective, from a product development perspective, from a research perspective, what have you, but certainly from a market perspective. And Todd's former company, Farmers Edge, is a good example of a homegrown organization that's been able to go outside of Canada borders. But it started here, and it started here, I think, because of the environment, because of the collaboration, because of access to the farm gate and so on. So I think we have the same opportunity with food systems, if you will, in that value chain and technology within it.
Perfect. And I guess just to further up there, do you believe so far and looking forward that we create the incentive to achieve that via producer production and moving forward into global export?
Yeah, I think there's work to be done there. I think we have an opportunity to work within the ecosystem, and I think a large part of that is what we do to attract investment, what we do to continue development of infrastructure, to continue on the research side of things. So those are conversations I think that are being had in probably lots of boardrooms and in conjunction in lots of associations, and also in conjunction with government. So I think there's an opportunity there, not just within Alberta, but within Canada at a national level, for the concept of a broader strategy for us that can be more collaborative and to set Canada sort of down a differentiation path with this. So I think there's opportunity and there's discussions happening, but they have to advance it as well.
Right, and I think that aligns, when we talk, even the way Todd brought it up and Darcy also communicated, just the acceleration of technology, but also we need to parallel the acceleration of incenting the right behaviors at so many different levels, right? So, great. I've turned my video off just to see if I can kind of preserve some broadband as I continue to communicate. So I'm going to change gears a little bit for everyone as we move to, specific now showing Canada and where we sit. We've had some good discussion around our path and where we sit from a B level. Looking at kind of the recent ag tech ecosystem surveys, right? They're significant spider webs, multi-layer, approaches, collaboration efforts, but then also significant, I think, silos in that. So, in Canada, we firmly believe, even as Olds College, that we have an educated farm and ranch group across our great nation. And when you look at that intense web, we have farmers and ranchers do have access to some of the best government and educational resources in the world. So Darcy, I know that FCC is very proactive across the nation. Can you share some light around more specifically, like where does FCC look at it from that perspective and the educational side of training, not only internally, but our producers to engage globally as well?
Yeah, I think one of the nice things, with FCC's mandate is we don't, we look generational and to make generational investments. We don't necessarily, as a government crown, look quarter to quarter. So, I personally believe, and have seen it all across the country, we're not short of anything. We're not short of smart people. We're not short of good ideas. We're not short of well-trained and well-educated, workers. And I think, what we want to do is work with, colleges and universities across the country, like we do with Olds, to make sure that, the next generation of agriculture entrepreneurs or farmers or tech people see opportunities in agriculture. And I don't know if that has always been there in the past. Agriculture's had its ups and downs, but we're really committed to working with, all these different colleges and universities and students across Canada to make sure they see opportunity in agriculture and technology. And there's a ton of opportunity right now, not just for rural kids, but kids that are growing up in urban areas, and we're seeing more and more of them see agriculture as a cool and exciting industry to enter. So, yeah, we have different programs and work with different colleges. Olds is probably in my area, it's the one we work the closest with. And it's a great maybe experiment or example of how people in different companies can all collaborate together. We all compete to a certain extent, but at Olds, I think we've all aligned on, hey, we're partners and we want to build something bigger together. And you referenced that before, James. Should we, I really believe we have to add more value to Canadian food or ingredients or produce or anything we do. The market here is obviously not the largest consumer market in the world, but and fighting over the same size of pie or piece of pie doesn't really make sense. We got to bake a bigger pie, and we got to give more opportunities to add value domestically, I think, and naturally some of that value will be exported around the world.
Great, thanks for that. I appreciate that. Thanks, Darcy, for that insight. I think you've made a number of great comments, especially around ecosystem and partnerships and collaborations that currently exist, and then also in the near future, right? And how everyone continues to work together. I want to dive deeper a little bit into the adoption side of it and ag tech, and it really aligns to that second bullet. So Todd, I'm going to come to you with the question. Ultimately, we do see cultural and trust issues between rural, urban, corporate companies and farm operators. How do we see the incentive changing moving forward to appropriately align objectives to break down some of those trust and cultural barriers that we see?
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I mean, for better or worse, you look at the demographic of the farm community, they look like me, like they're a 50-year-old guy, right? And they probably went into farming not to play around with technology, but to farm. And when you look at it from that perspective, there definitely is this need to, generate the next generation of farmers. Like my niece, she's 18 years old and she can get into the tractor and she can set up the seeding equipment and play with all the monitors. But it is much more difficult for my brother, who may not look as good as me, but closer. And then my father, in his late 70s. They're not used to using that technology. So when you start looking at how we're going to have to engage, this is where I do like some initiatives at Olds College, the things like the smart center and the living lab that they're developing and the hands-on display. We're going to have to also target not just kids going up, but we are going to have to expose those that are currently on the farm to technology. And it will be a cultural change to do that. Then there's the other area, I think, as well, when you start looking at data. I know FCC is, really big on ag data and transparency and the proper stewardship. That has to happen as well. But my fundamental belief is that farms will share their data if there is an economic or a reason to do that. So there too, as an industry, we continue to have to drive those areas of creating the environment to share data. So if you're ATV, maybe there's an opportunity there to, if you bring your data in a digital format and it's validated and calibrated, it supports your easier uptake of your operating loans. There was a recent, pilot with Olds College and Decisive. Well, I thought it was really interesting. They literally took right field right to the barley can, got a QRG code on there, right, so that you can actually track and trace that. Like we've got to do more of that as well to start building out those infrastructures and those ways of working to share the data. And so between creating environments where you can train and develop not just the kids, but the farmers themselves, and bringing, and piloting solutions from industry to utilize data, I think will drive that. But it is going to be, again, one step at a time, and that continue ways of working in development. It will be iterative in nature, but I bet you guys, when we look back 5 or 6 years from now, we will see a much more stronger workforce that knows how to utilize technology. We just have to do more of this type of stuff.
Go ahead, John. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could jump in and certainly, agree 100% with what Todd had to say there. I think, and we've seen adoption. If you look back 10 years and think about what technologies were in use and what's been adopted since, it may not be adopting at the pace we think it should be. But again, Todd's outlined some very good reasons for that. Some other good reasons for that are certainly around, just technology itself, figuring out technology, going through trial and error processes, developing, minimum viable products, putting them in the market, seeing what works and what doesn't work, and going back to the drawing board or not. So as we've, over the last number of years, advanced some of those technologies, I think, technology in and of itself has improved. So I think the next 10 to 15 years offer much more of an opportunity for us to advance adoption. Ideally, if we have, a cohesive strategy that we're all on board on in Canada, then this could move us forward and let us be in Alberta and in Canada, leaders, if you will, in how to do this and from a global perspective. But I think that concept of, again, the ecosystem is so important in that respect, right? So as Todd mentioned, what's ATB's interest in that? So he put out a good example of some interest for an organization like ATB in that connection. We have Olds College and the Smart Farm there that plays such a significant role, as Darcy mentioned, in bringing us together as collaborators into a cooperative environment versus a competitive environment. The other thing I'll speak to, I think, maybe
Oh, we might have lost John.
There he is.
back.
I think John froze there. We'll come back to him if he does now.
Am I back?
Now you're back, John.
Okay. Yeah, I spent,
Yes.
Again, part of my early career, if you will, in a value-added sort of servicing agri retail business, and that was focused on looking at new technologies, how to bring new technologies, test those technologies, work with producers in a collaborative environment on trying those technologies that really collectively looked at how to minimize the risk associated with trying new technologies and advancing new technologies. So I think that's an important aspect for us is how do we do that as an industry? And we're starting to do that now. We're seeing some of that happen. And I think if we can continue these discussions and look for ways to try and reduce the risk, to all of the participants involved, to move technology forward, I think that's very important for us going forward. And if we can do that the next 10 to 15 years, we will see a lot of technology adoption.
Great. Yeah, absolutely, John. Thank you for that. So I think we're 9 minutes. Darcy, you got something to add there?
No, I was just going to build on Todd and Jonathan's point, because I do think it's important. And I think trust is, farmers need to trust that, when they're sharing the data, when they're entering their data, they understand, all the rules around it and how they're going to participate in these ecosystems. And I think as these ag data ecosystems, start to appear, if farmers are partners in them, they will adopt technology to, whether it's to access to markets or get some new value or return that they don't have. And I think, Todd said it best, that you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I think it's an iterative approach, and Old is really helping bringing everybody to the table in a collaborative manner to all work together.
Great thoughts. I'm going to open it up to the floor now. There's actually a couple questions in there, so I'm going to go to Norm Dreger. Great to hear from you again. Norm's asking, it sounds like there's a pace question, and that's actually my word that was coming up as you were all experiencing and sharing your thoughts was around patience. So Norm's coming at it, there'll be a lot of fragmentation, proliferation of tool sets before a true integration. Most farmers want to simplify the use of tools. So John, maybe I'll ask you, is this years or decades, or is this a generational jump that we're looking at here before things settle down into that simplification? Tough to answer that, especially with the proliferation of technology and how it jumps around.
Yeah, so I guess, and I see who asked that question. So, but long and short, I think, I mean, we need standardization. We need to move towards standardization. And I think we've had enough technology come forward now, some different trials and tribulations, if you will, around different technologies that in certain respects, I think we can start hopefully to move towards some standardization, probably more so on, data and data connectivity and data integrity and some of those things. But, having said that, I mean, it's the free market, and we're working within the free market system here, obviously in Canada, and moving forward within a free market system is going to always, there's always going to be new technologies coming. There's going to be improvements to technologies. And so I think we can continue to see, potentially some proliferation, but at the same time, hopefully in parallel, we see some standardization start to happen as well. And that's our challenge. And I think, again, if we can look how to most collectively work with an ecosystem, and again, maybe Old plays and the smart farm plays a role here, is how do we look at that standardization to move forward much quicker than this being generational, if you will, or decades even.
Great. Todd, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, Norm and I actually worked together at Syngenta. I think he remembers our own challenges at trying to pull together data and that piece. In fact, Norm gave me this spreadsheet back in the day when I was at Syngenta and said, "Here, Todd, here's our database." It took us 6 years after that to get that done. So, I think Norm, looking at that question for Norm there is a lot to unpack in terms of how you manage data. So we've had a lot of conversations here around connectivity, but there is this ability to standardize data as well and data architectures to make that work. And so, you do go into some markets, like in the US, you've got an Argus database where there is a common customer ID. And, you wonder if there is a place where we start thinking as an industry about some of the very basics to create a data infrastructure. Because I think what's a little bit different is you look at data as a whole, and a lot of the data rules and, is built around marketing of data. In this case, we're not marketing data. We're using data to actually connect up the industry. So there are some fundamentals that need to be in place where, the farmer can turn the taps on and off. Those are some things we can, as an industry, kind of agree on. And then I think there are some other things where I think, and I don't know if that's a government role or there's a role there as an industry to start thinking about, can we create a general household? What is the infrastructure that needs to be put in place that creates the right foundation and environment to build on? Because I'm 100% with John. this private industry has to drive 90% of that. But the conversation too of what is the right ecosystem for, for us to have to do that. And that's where I think Canada will have a bit of an advantage. We're not as large and complex, and we do have quite a nice educated workforce where we probably can get that in place quicker than, say, a Brazil or in Eastern Europe. And I think those are some of the other things we just have to now start thinking about tackling.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd, for the additional insight into that. We're nearing 3 minutes left, and I want to respect everyone's timetable and schedule. Darcy, did you have anything to add to that last topic?
No, I think it's a great question, and I wish I had a crystal ball to know how long it's going to take. Our position with Ag Expert is everything starts, all of these ag data value chains and ecosystems don't work without farmer data. And what we've tried to do, and others in the industry, is just create the easiest, most solid, simple tools for farmers to digitize their data. I think the next steps, are now up to us as we start to get more farmers adopting and digitizing their records, is for companies like Farm Credit and Panelists and some of the other players in the industry, ATB, and to make those ecosystems trusted and solid, and make it easy for farmers to choose who they share their data with. We're forever working on a use case of enter your data once on any system and use it multiple times to solve multiple business processes. And I think once we start capitalizing on some of these opportunities, you'll see more farmers coming and adopting technology.
Great insight as well, Darcy. And I think that leads, Brenda, you've asked a very good question, and we likely don't have enough time to do it any justice, but really what we hear around technology and the shoehorning, if you will, as Brenda mentions, into agriculture, in 20 seconds or less, John, any concept of that from your history in dealing with IoT and tech that you feel that this is technology looking for a problem to solve in agriculture versus true hard tested problems where technology can actually play a solution role in that?
Yeah, I think real quickly, I don't think that really anyone's out there trying to shoehorn technology in. I think, it's the whole concept of, does someone understand their own real needs, or is there an opportunity for someone that understands technology better to see that there's a need there? So I think companies generally and people that are coming forward new technology are really looking for issues to solve, problems to solve, and bringing technologies forward that help do that. So, but it still needs to be collaborative. I mean, you need to work in conjunction with the customers you're trying to serve to develop that technology and move it forward and see what works best. And I think there's lots of different models, with which, that can be done. And that, certainly I've seen companies doing, and have worked with companies that are doing, and interesting too to see Paul's Q question there, if you will, with respect to data standardization and so on. And, I think Todd and I could both speak to where we've seen, the idea of trying to standardize data in agriculture. And, because it's such a big and broad industry, I mean, it has shown, through various attempts had failed in the past around, different types of data in agriculture. There's organizations out there that are trying to do this in some context with some parts of the industry, if you will. And it's not simple, but yeah, I totally agree with the concept of some standardization around data for sure.
Great, thanks, John, for that. With that last comment, I think it's just time for us to begin to wrap up. And I truly just want to, reach out and say thank you to John, Todd, and Darcy for spending time today. Tremendous insight. Thank you for sharing, some of the nuts and bolts behind your organizations and really the position that you're taking within the ag sector to help producers and agri-food continue to move forward. And thanks to all of you who've joined the conversation today. It looks like our numbers were very good. So hopefully, and I believe we've added value to that conversation that leads to the next discussion that we're going to have in August 11th or 12th, where the next discussion will be around the philosophy behind data utilization. And we look forward to that. So that'll be number 2 of 4 with respect to this speaker series. And we're looking forward to you joining. If anyone has any questions or needs further information, this recording will be posted on oldscollege.ca. and our partners with respect to that. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate your commitment to this time. Thank you very much, and have a great day.